Vincent Kennedy McMahon was born on August 24, 1945, in Pinehurst, North Carolina, a small town far removed from the glittering arenas and television screens that would one day define his life. The son of Vincent J. McMahon and Vicky Askew, he grew up in a complex family environment shaped by both absence and ambition. His father was already involved in the world of professional wrestling promotion, but Vince did not grow up under his immediate guidance. Instead, he spent his early years in relative modesty, shaped by a desire to prove himself against the odds. These humble beginnings would later influence his unrelenting drive to take wrestling from a regional attraction to a global empire. Discovering wrestling through his father's legacy. Vince McMahon's story is often told as the tale of a visionary who reshaped professional wrestling into the modern juggernaut of sports entertainment. Yet the foundation of that story begins long before boardrooms, television deals, and sold-out stadiums. It begins in his formative years when he reunited with his father, Vincent J. McMahon, and was introduced to a world that was at once gritty and glamorous. Professional wrestling in the mid-20th century was unlike the global spectacle fans recognize today. It was fragmented into territories, with different promoters each controlling a specific region of the United States. These promoters adhered to a loose, unwritten agreement, one based on respect and survival. They didn't invade each other's markets, understanding that to do so would invite conflict and collapse. Within this landscape, McMahon's father oversaw the Capital Wrestling Corporation, a powerful fixture in the northeastern United States. When young Vince first stepped into this world, he was struck by more than just the action in the ring. The larger-than-life personas, the orchestrated drama, and the spectacle of athletic combat fascinated him. But beyond the surface, he was equally captivated by the machinery that made it all possible. The way television cameras transformed local stars into household names, the craft of promotion that filled arenas, and the storytelling that made fans weep or cheer, it all left a lasting impression on him. From the outset, Vince wasn't satisfied with being a passive observer. He envisioned something bigger, something that reached far beyond the territorial system his father worked within. For Vince, wrestling was not merely about what happened inside the ropes. It was a complete performance, an industry where theatre, sport, and television converged. In those early years, he was planting the seeds of ambition that would one day grow into a revolutionary transformation of wrestling itself. Ambitions beyond the territorial system. By the early 1980s, Vince McMahon had assumed control of the family business. Unlike his father, who was content running a profitable regional enterprise, Vince was restless. He wanted to dismantle the boundaries of the territorial system and create a unified national powerhouse. It was an audacious goal, one that required him to defy decades of tradition. This decision sent shockwaves through the wrestling industry. Promoters across the country had long abided by a gentleman's agreement, maintaining boundaries and avoiding hostile takeovers of each other's talent or television markets. Vince, however, saw the future in nationwide television syndication and recognized that staying confined to the Northeast would limit both revenue and influence. He began buying television time in other regions, introducing his product to audiences that had never seen it before. Perhaps his most decisive move came when he aggressively acquired top talent from rival territories. Wrestlers who had been local icons were now placed on a national stage. Hulk Hogan, one of the most pivotal acquisitions, embodied Vince's vision perfectly. With his chiseled physique, charismatic presence, and crossover appeal, Hogan was destined to become the face of the WWF during its explosive rock and wrestling era. By linking Hogan to mainstream celebrities such as Cyndi Lauper and Mr. T Vince blurred the lines between wrestling and pop culture. This wasn't just expansion, it was disruption. For many in the wrestling establishment, Vince was breaking sacred rules. He was called ruthless, accused of betraying traditions, and resented for his willingness to crush competitors. Yet for others, he was a visionary who saw what wrestling could become in a media-driven age. His investments in television, syndication, and pay-per-view positioned WWF as more than a regional pastime. It became a national obsession. The evolution of WWE into a global brand. The 1980s and 1990s marked the rapid evolution of the WWF, later renamed WWE, into an international empire. Vince McMahon's approach mirrored his own personality, unrelenting, ambitious, and controversial. He believed wrestling could be more than just athletic contests. It could be a form of entertainment that rivaled Hollywood productions. The creation of WrestleMania in 1985 was the ultimate realization of this belief. Marketed as the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania was more than a wrestling show. It was a pop culture event. The spectacle featured not only wrestlers, but also musicians, celebrities, and mainstream media coverage. Fans who had never before cared about professional wrestling were suddenly drawn in by the sheer magnitude of the production. It set the tone for how McMahon would run WWE for decades to come. Under his leadership, the company transitioned from smoky regional arenas to vast stadiums and global broadcasts. Production values skyrocketed, with pyrotechnics, theme music, and larger-than-life sets becoming staples of the WWE experience. McMahon coined the term sports entertainment to distinguish his product from traditional wrestling, emphasizing its theatricality and scripted narratives. This rebranding not only attracted new fans, but also helped the company navigate legal and regulatory challenges. By the 1990s, WWE was the undisputed leader in the wrestling industry. Even during the turbulent Monday Night Wars against WCW, McMahon's vision carried the company through, culminating in WWE's eventual victory and acquisition of its rival. He had done what few believed possible, turned wrestling into a global entertainment brand. Physical toll and health struggles in the spotlight. While Vince McMahon was best known as the mastermind behind WWE, he was also a performer in his own right. His decision to step in front of the cameras as the villainous Mr. McMahon character added an entirely new dimension to WWE's storytelling. The feud between Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the late 1990s remains one of the most iconic rivalries in wrestling history. McMahon's willingness to physically involve himself in storylines came at a personal cost. Unlike many executives, he did not shy away from taking bumps, stunts, or even full matches. He was slammed through tables, hit with steel chairs, and even participated in high-profile bouts against some of WWE's biggest stars. One of the most infamous incidents occurred during the 2005 Royal Rumble. Rushing to the ring to resolve a storyline dispute, McMahon slid under the ropes and, in a freak accident, tore both of his quadriceps muscles simultaneously. In a surreal scene, the chairman of WWE was suddenly unable to stand, barking instructions from a seated position on the arena floor. The image of him sitting helplessly, yet still trying to maintain authority, captured the paradox of his career. Powerful, yet vulnerable, indomitable, yet human. Beyond such publicized moments, McMahon has endured the quiet toll of decades in an unforgiving industry. Sleepless nights, the physical strain of travel, and the constant pressure of leadership contributed to exhaustion and stress-related challenges. Though he often projected the image of an indestructible mogul, insiders knew he paid a heavy personal price for his relentless involvement. financial success and rumors of crisis. McMahon's career has been marked by staggering financial highs and persistent rumors of collapse. His ability to generate wealth was undeniable, yet speculation about financial instability followed him at nearly every stage of his career. The volatility of WWE's stock prices often fueled these rumors. Expansion into new markets required significant investments, and controversies sometimes rattled investor confidence. Critics frequently painted McMahon as a gambler, someone whose ambitious risks could just as easily backfire as succeed. The XFL, in particular, became a symbol of these risks. Its spectacular failure in 2001 fueled gossip that McMahon had lost fortunes and might even jeopardize WWE's stability. When he attempted a relaunch in 2020, only for the COVID-19 pandemic to derail the project, those whispers resurfaced with even greater force. Yet despite these missteps, McMahon's financial empire endured. His ownership stake in WWE, combined with other assets, secured his fortune. As of 2025, Forbes estimated his net worth at around 340 crore USD, an almost incomprehensible figure that underscored his long-term financial security. Rumors of crisis persisted because McMahon's career was so closely tied to high-stakes ventures. Whenever WWE underwent major shifts, whether creative, financial, or structural, the public speculated that McMahon was on the brink. But history consistently showed otherwise. He might stumble, but he always found a way to rise again. The XFL and the risks of overextension. Among McMahon's ventures outside wrestling, the XFL stands out as his most ambitious and controversial gamble. Launched in 2001, it was marketed as a grittier, faster, and more entertaining alternative to the NFL. Combining football with elements of showmanship, the XFL promised fans a blend of sport and spectacle that mirrored WWE's formula. The reality, however, was far less successful. Poor television ratings, questionable rule changes, and a lack of competitive legitimacy doomed the league after a single season. McMahon's reputation as an infallible businessman took a major hit, and the XFL became shorthand for overreach. 2 decades later, undeterred, he tried again. The 2020 relaunch showed promise, with better organization and stronger football credibility. Yet fate intervened. The COVID-19 pandemic forced the league to shut down, leading to another collapse. For critics, it was proof that McMahon's ambition sometimes outpaced reality. For supporters, it was evidence of his tenacity, his refusal to give up even in the face of repeated setbacks. These ventures reinforced the duality of his career, a man capable of extraordinary success but also vulnerable to dramatic failure. The rumors of financial instability that surrounded the XFL eras were less about actual crisis and more about public fascination with whether McMahon's empire could finally crack. Personal life and family involvement in WWE. Behind the spectacle of his business ventures, McMahon's personal life has been deeply tied to WWE. He married Linda McMahon in 1966, and together they laid the foundation for the modern company. Linda played an instrumental role in its growth, serving in executive positions before transitioning into politics, where she became Administrator of the Small Business Administration under President Donald Trump. Their children, Shane and Stephanie McMahon, carried the family legacy forward. Both appeared on screen as characters in WWE storylines, but their contributions extended far beyond performance. Shane developed a reputation as a risk-taking performer known for his daredevil stunts, while also contributing to the company's global expansion. Stephanie rose through the corporate ranks, becoming Chief Brand Officer and one of WWE's most visible executives. The McMahon grandchildren, Aurora Rose Levesque, Murphy Claire Levesque, Declan James McMahon, and Kenyon McMahon represent the possibility of a third generation continuing the family's wrestling dynasty. Whether they ultimately follow in Vince's footsteps remains to be seen, but their presence symbolizes the deeply personal nature of WWE's story. For Vince, WWE has never just been a business. It has been a family endeavor, woven into the fabric of his personal life. The burden of leadership and stress-related health struggles. Running a global entertainment company comes with immense responsibility. For Vince McMahon, the burden of leadership was relentless. He was not just an executive making decisions from a distance. He was deeply involved in the creative, financial, and operational aspects of WWE. This all-consuming role often came at the expense of his health. Colleagues have described him as a workaholic, someone who thrived on little sleep and constant travel. While this discipline contributed to WWE's success, it also took a toll. In later years, whispers of health challenges became more common. Reports of exhaustion, stress-related ailments, and age-related decline surfaced, though McMahon himself rarely acknowledged them publicly. The tension between his public image and private reality created an ongoing narrative. On screen, he projected indestructibility, often mocking weakness in his Mr. McMahon persona. Off-screen, however, he was a man in his 80s, carrying the strain of decades spent building and maintaining an empire. His determination to stay in control, even as others urged him to delegate, was both admirable and concerning. It demonstrated his refusal to relinquish power, but also highlighted the sacrifices demanded by his role. Financial rumours in the 2020s. The 2020s brought renewed scrutiny of McMahon's financial position. WWE's merger with Endeavour to form TKO Group Holdings reshaped the company's structure, raising questions about his influence and wealth. While still a billionaire, some suggested that the merger diluted his authority and might weaken his long-term financial standing. Media coverage of legal disputes, boardroom controversies, and shifting executive dynamics added fuel to the fire. Headlines speculated about his diminishing role, framing him as a titan whose power was slipping. Financial rumours flared again, with some commentators painting him as vulnerable. Yet these narratives often overstated the reality. While McMahon's role undeniably evolved, his personal fortune remained secure. His financial foundation was not undone by structural changes, and the recurring rumours of crisis once again proved more reflective of public fascination than fact. Public image and scandals. No portrait of Vince McMahon is complete without acknowledging the controversies that have followed him throughout his career. From accusations of monopolistic practices to personal scandals and legal battles, his tenure has been defined as much by turbulence as by triumph. Each scandal threatened to tarnish his reputation, and each one gave rise to exaggerated rumours of collapse. Critics predicted that lawsuits, government investigations, or internal strife would finally bring him down. Yet time and again he found ways to weather the storm. His ability to navigate crises became a defining feature of his career, reinforcing his reputation as a survivor. Public perception of McMahon remains polarizing. To some, he is a ruthless mogul who placed profit above tradition and ethics. To others, he is a genius who transformed wrestling into an art form and elevated it to global prominence. The truth, as with most complex figures, lies somewhere in between. The legacy of a visionary and survivor. As of 2025, Vince McMahon stands as one of the most complex figures in modern entertainment. He is a visionary who took a regional business and redefined it as a global industry. He is a businessman whose ambition produced staggering successes and spectacular failures. And he is a survivor, of injuries, controversies, rumors, and the relentless pressures of leadership. His legacy is not defined by rumors of financial ruin or whispers of declining health, but by the indelible mark he left on professional wrestling and popular culture. He created a universe where athleticism met storytelling, where larger-than-life characters captured the imaginations of millions, and where an entire industry was reshaped by one man's vision. Even as debates continue about his decisions, his ethics, and his influence, there is no denying that Vince McMahon's impact is enduring. Wrestling as it exists today, its scale, its reach, its cultural relevance, would not be the same without him. His story is one of resilience, ambition, and transformation. Above all, it is the story of a man who refused to accept limits, who envisioned something greater, and who, despite every obstacle, built an empire that will